Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Lorena Bailey. In addition to being the residency director and working with you, I also serve as an academic advisor for some students, so I will be even more in touch with some of you as you are working with your students. What I'd like to do now is actually go through the administrative residency portion, a little bit more detailed information on the requirements, some of the products the students will have. The good news is some of it is a little repetitive to what Dr. Sexton just covered, so we'll have it on there. We'll go quickly through it unless you have additional questions. If you have not already done so, please pull out your residency manual. We will be covering a couple of areas for you. If you did not get a manual, please just let me know. I do have a couple of extra, and I will provide that for you. But what I really would like to do is just take some time to really explore, kind of go over the overview of a residency, look at some of the resources that are available to you both online as well as in other areas. And I really want to take some time to look at the responsibilities of all the players for this residency year. Of course, we'll look at portfolio projects, give you a better description. Some of you are very familiar with it, but give you a better description of the actual requirements that the students have to submit. The BEAR, we've gotten over it pretty extensively, but again, if you have any questions or additional comments or thoughts, we can go through that as well. The documentation and the awards, because I want you to be aware of some of the recognition that's available for the students. And then, of course, how we get your feedback and how we communicate throughout the year. You have seen this slide, and part of why I have this up here, and it's a little bit more updated, Emily, we included Hill Country Memorial on this version of the slide. So we're super excited that we have such a diverse residency for us. We are global, as Colonel Kim mentioned earlier, so it's just a privilege. And part of what we're going to do today, later on, is just leverage on some of the sites that we have available to just kind of give you a better opportunity, learn from each other what we're actually doing in our sites and how they differ in locations. But I want to go through this part just to kind of give you an idea of how the residency placement actually happens. Some of you are here in the audience because you want a resident for 2019, and that's great. And I just want to go over this on how the process works for us. So we just in process. First day of school was on Monday for our new class, 50 students, so that's wonderful. I can tell you that this year, going out to the residency sites, we only have 38 students. So I had quite a few sites that went unfilled. So there were a lot of hurt feelings. It was a little tough. It was a little challenging. Some of our usual locations did not get filled, to include Madigan, which is very unusual. This is the first time I think that Madigan is going without a resident. Landstuhl in Germany did not get filled. So again, there was a lot. But when you only have 38 students, it's a little difficult to try to place in our usual traditional sites. But for you, just to kind of give you an idea, our students just started. We kind of go over this whole competency assessment so that they're very well aware of the expectations during the residency year. And then for me, what happens is I start my coordination during the August time frame till about the October time frame. This is when I am reaching out to the facilities. I'm saying, hey, do you want one? Do you have one right now? What do you think? As a preceptor, that is probably the most important part, because we want to put our students at as many locations, but if I don't have a preceptor who's willing to commit to the requirements of our program, then that provides additional challenges. Most importantly, though, I need you to understand that how we place our students, there's a little order. First, we go by service specific. So if the Coast Guard tells me we're going to send you some students, Coast Guard has to stay in the San Antonio area. So right there, I'm already limiting to what can go out to the rest of the world. Navy students, the most difficult, the most challenging will be the Army, because they're the biggest part of it. But if, dependent by corps, if, for example, the 70 Alphas say, nope, we're only going to send 25% to civilian residencies, the rest have to stay in military treatment facilities, then of course that kind of lowers the availability that I have for the civilian facilities. The consultants play a huge role. We coordinate with them as well throughout this upcoming months, just to make sure that we're able to place the students accordingly to meet the requirements of the service as well. And then, of course, we absolutely take into consideration the student's preference. So they will send me a list of their top 3 to 5 choices. Most of our students come in with the I want to go here attitude, and I have to kind of calm them down just a little bit because they say you may get that, you may not get that. Last year I had quite a few that wanted, my nurses that came in, the nurse method analysts, they all came in saying, hey, we heard we're going to civilian residencies this year. Yes. So they all had, you know, selections of going to Mayo and Cleveland and all this. Then their consultant came back and said, no, they're all going to MTF. So there's a lot of little broken hearts there, but that's how it works, right? So, you know, and it just depends on the year. It depends on what's currently out there. We also have to look at placement beyond the residency. So if we know that there's a need to fill specific slots at certain MTFs, then that's how it goes. The good news is the Air Force is like, send them to the Mayo, send them to the Clevelands. The Air Force only wants them to go to civilian residency, so that's great. We have a wonderful pool of applicants from the other services. Navy as well, they're very liberal in where we can place our students. But then the final step to this is we have the residency committee that meets, and all of this happens, again, during this fall time. And we actually look at faces to spaces, and we want to make sure that we send the top qualified candidate to the right institutions. If we end up with 3 students who want to go to Mass Gen, for example, it's going to come down to GPA, and it's going to come down to academic performance and experience as well, because we don't want to send a student to a civilian facility or a large facility who have never ever been in a hospital setting, and we do have. Some of our Navy students come in and they don't have a healthcare background. They're brand new into the healthcare industry, so we look at all that. So hopefully by November, December timeframe, we have locked in our students to the residency location. And then of course the rest of the time I'm coordinating with you, let you know if you want to interview. We do have facilities who prefer to do interviews. Right now I have Mass Gen, mostly our civilian sites, Mass Gen, UCLA, University of Washington's a new one that requires, and Cleveland Clinic that require interviews with our students, and then we have others who have the right of refusal, if you will, and for any reason they feel that candidate is not qualified. The good news is we've not ever had anybody rejected, so that's wonderful. We've had great success with placing our students in the right locations. Of course, your students will arrive in the July timeframe. For some of you, you're saying goodbye to one as you welcome another one in, and that's kind of our class, you know, our events as well. Now, year 2, this is where you all become much more involved with the resident. Again, the residency side begins in July. For you all, you should have your students on board July 24th. That should be their day 1. Most areas have 1 to 2 weeks of orientation. And then the student kind of gets familiar. You guys work with them on all of their rotations, get them settled in, and get them started. October timeframe is when their first bear is due. So they will submit this via Canvas, which is their learning management system, online system, and of course they continue to go through. By January timeframe, that is when they will actually turn in their mid-draft portfolio. And what that is, it's a sanity check, if you will, to make sure that the student is on track, that they are working in the right direction with the right type of projects, and that the writing and their formatting is actually tracking as well. 1.5 projects is what we ask the students to submit. Not a best practice. We want them to actually do the projects. And so that comes in January. And you have a lot of feedback, a lot of coordinating with the advisor as well to make sure that everybody's tracking. And then, of course, we continue throughout the year. We have progress. The BEAR reports, which we call the progress reports, are due in January and April, and then, of course, their final one in July. May is the most stressful time for them, as that is when their portfolio is actually due. And then, of course, they get their feedback. And we'll talk about what happens if they don't meet successfully. What I really want you to be aware of as well is those teleconference dates that I have down at the very bottom. And if you would please, if you have your residency manual, if I could ask you to please turn to page 21. Page 21. As very busy executives, I need to get on your calendar today, so please make note of these quarterly teleconferences that we have on here. We have them already set out. They're always at the same time. For preceptors, your teleconference is at 11 o'clock Central Standard Time. We have a separate teleconference for the students at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Central Standard Time. And again, students don't attend the preceptors and vice versa. This is an opportunity for us to make sure that we share as much information with you. We also look for guest speakers during that time. Again, we like to just highlight the diversity of our residency sites. We have our faculty who joins in as well, and that's when we give you as much guidance as we can to help you along. In addition to those dates, I do try to not inundate you with email traffic, but I will send at least one monthly email for you around the middle of the month with just some key updates, reminders, etc. Any questions on the teleconference dates, times, etc.? Okay, great. All right, so year 2, that is the second year of the student's learning journey. It is a 52-week requirement for the students. What I need you to kind of, reinforce to the student is that this is, in fact, an entire academic year. They end up getting 9 semester hours from Baylor University towards their degree completion. What we want to do is to provide as tailored an experience for the student as we possibly can. With this in mind, there are certain objectives that we have, and that is to align the student with those senior healthcare executives out there that will help them take everything that they've learned during their didactic year and actually apply it to real-world application, as Colonel Sexton was just mentioning above. This is all about growing the student. This is all about growing that leader so that at the end of their 2-year journey, they're able to come back to the military health system, those smart executives, and ready to keep us going and growing as we continue to provide service for the most important customer in the world, which is our military beneficiaries. There are a lot of deliverables. We will cover those deliverables as we kind of go through all of this. All right, this next slide, the residency plan. This is a big deliverable for the student. And I do want you to know that we did make some minor changes to the residency plan this year. Part of this, why we did this, was feedback directly from the students as well as from the preceptors. What we had found is that the residency plan that we had out there had been around for quite a while. So there was a lot of just copying. Let me just take the example that's on the manual and we're just going to tweak it. And then they turned it in at the beginning of the year, and then that was kind of it. Well, because we want to make sure we tailor the experience as they continue to grow, we're actually asking our students to submit updated residency plans on a quarterly basis. So this gives us a better idea of, okay, this was the track you wanted to do. You had a very nice plan in the beginning, but stuff happens, right? So we had to modify a little bit. We want to make sure the student stays on track with certain core rotations. So again, just a nice, it's a little bit different. It is outlined in your residency manual. The students understand the deliverable, and again, they'll submit that via campus. The big one is the portfolio projects. We're going to cover a little bit more. The BEAR, we've already talked a lot extensively, but again, if you have any questions, we can address this as well. And then at the end of the year, the preceptor completion memo, you are an extension of the faculty, and so it is you who's certifying that the student has met all the requirements. You submit that. That's your signature. That stays on record. That's part of the student's academic record. All the deliverables are submitted, as I mentioned, via Canvas. That is their online learning management system. Students are very familiar with Canvas. They've gone through it the entire didactic year, so they know how to work it. And this is also how I communicate primarily with the students. So anytime that we have announcements or information we need to pass out, we will post that to the announcements on Canvas, and that gets delivered to them. This is just a little snapshot to give you an idea of what it looks like. I'm sure most of you are familiar with those, and if not, I'm more than happy to go through with it. You do not have access to Canvas. The student has access to it, and so, anytime you kind of have that discussion, just let them know that that's where they need to go. All right, let's talk about the roles and responsibilities and this whole relationship that we will have, intimate relationship that we will have between all of us. We like to say this is a residency triad. This is basically made or comprised of the preceptor, the professor, and of course the student. So Colonel Dave Parker is actually the DCA at Brooke Army Medical Center. He been around with us for a long time, so he's a fantastic preceptor, very senior, very experienced. And I show this out because if you have any questions, you're welcome to contact any of the preceptors that you've met here today or across our sites. And of course, there's always communication between the three. Your academic advisor is always there for you. And I will give you a list of the entire faculty, so if for any reason you're not able to get a hold of your advisor, they're out, they're TUI, or perhaps deployed, because it can happen, there are plenty of other folks back home at Army Medicine that we can help you with. And then, of course, your student. That's actually one of our students right now. That is O.J. Nahara, and he is going to be doing his residency at Brooke Army Medical Center. All right. This look familiar to anybody? Colonel Getty, yes, sir. So Colonel Getty is our preceptor. I was privileged to do a site visit because we will do site visits. We don't visit all of them. Our site visits are required at least once every 2 years. So we try to kind of get any of the sites that have not been visited, as I mentioned, within that time frame. We try to get out there. I was able to visit his facility this past year, so that was wonderful opportunity for me to see in real world what they're doing, what is actually there. But there is a lot, and I tell you this is just a little bit, because in your manual, if you would look, and again, all of this on your table of contents will kind of point you to where you need to be. But for the responsibilities, of course, we've got the preceptors on page 3, and then there's throughout the manual as well, you will have others. But really what I put up here was just some of the key ones that as you go back, you can kind of start. When your student arrives, you really do want to have a place in place, or location in place already for them to work out of. Most of our facilities have that. Most of them have little offices set up, whatever. But you do want to have a working environment for them. You want to make sure that you provide a good orientation. Usually, whatever your facility does for orientation, you will kind of throw them in for that onboarding process as well. The bear is critical. I will send out a message as soon as we get back to let the student know that they need to email you their bear so that you have it ahead of time. If you have an opportunity to kind of assess, get you an idea of what they're coming in with, I think it'll be very helpful for you. So thank you for that suggestion, sir. We'll make sure we get that out from the students. And then, of course, you want to introduce them to your staff. We always tell the students, and we recognize again that you're super busy, so many of you will kind of hand off, and that's perfectly fine, to some of your colleagues, if you will, senior colleagues in there. One of the best examples that I had the privilege of hearing was that one of our preceptors actually has drafted a letter that basically tells OR setting, logistics, or whoever, hey, this is my student, he has permission, he needs to be in your area for a week, or something to that extent, so that when that student is actually trying to coordinate those rotations, they're not looked at with, who are you and why are you here? And the student is like, well, you know, the DCA says that I need to rotate. Yeah, well, tell the DCA. I mean, it happens. So it's a nice, you know, your folks, they're busy. They want to take care of those patients, right? So you want to help that resident out as much as you can with introductory letters, etc. And of course, for you, you are constantly evaluating, or not constantly, but regularly evaluating your students' performance. Again, it's all about growing their competencies, etc., etc. Now, one of the things is, how often should I meet with my preceptor? That's usually what we get from the students. And you know, we've seen it. We've seen the range of different things. Most of them kind of do a weekly or bi-weekly one-on-one. Some of them do a 30-minute set aside, let's plan a lunch. That's great if you have that time. I had one student whose preceptor was so busy that they worked it out that they were both runners. So they're like, okay, you know what, let's go running after work. That's when they kind of did their mentoring. Great, because I'm not a runner. I don't think I could have a conversation, but okay. One of them said, hey, I'll walk you to the parking garage and walk with you to the car, whatever. But what you want to do is that you want to have that face-to-face interaction with the student as much as you possibly can. Any questions on any of this? Okay, great. All right, the student. The student has just as much responsibility as you all do. They are there to learn, and they're there to say, hey, I need help growing this particular competency. So, of course, they will work closely with you or with your assigned co-preceptors, if you will. and they really want to be on the lookout for different opportunities throughout the facility. We tell the student, just because you're not geographically located with us does not mean that you're completely disconnected from Baylor. They have a responsibility to reach out and talk to their advisor.